Our opening words this morning: humans, just like strings of lights, are wired for connection. It's when we're wound most tightly that we need the connection most of all. We're at our best when we are plugged into each other. We find our true purpose and spark with others, not alone. And it's in these connections that we shine most brightly. I invite you to light your own chalice and place it where it can be seen by all of us if you are able. Here's mine. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope right there as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind you to leave yourselves muted. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing with Jan as big and loud as you like. So make it a joyous experience. So let's all sing the opening hymn, We Are All a Part by Jill Knight.
We are all a part of this beautiful web of existence, with a goal of peace, justice, and liberty. We affirm the worth and dignity of every person with compassion and equality. We encourage and accept one another in our spiritual growth here on earth, with freedom in our search for truth and meaning. We are all a part. We are all a part of this beautiful web of existence. We are all a part of this beautiful web of existence, with a goal of peace, justice, and liberty. We affirm the worth and dignity of every person with compassion and equality. We encourage and accept one another in our spiritual growth here on earth, with freedom in our search for truth and meaning. We are all a part. We are all a part of this beautiful web of existence.
Thank you, Jan. I know that you have added to that, so the musical part of that sounds really great, because that is not how it sounded in the very beginning. no, but I mean it's great. Thank you. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We are glad you have joined us today. We acknowledge that our UUCC sanctuary stands on land that was originally occupied by coastal Chumash indigenous peoples, whose ancestors lived primarily in the San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation inviting speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect with the UU's 7 principles. Today's service centers on the third principle. We affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Spiritual growth isn't about a vertical ascent to heaven, but about growth in every dimension at once. It's spirituality in 3D. Growth in spirit doesn't measure one's proximity to a God above, but rather the spaciousness of one's own soul, its volume, its capacity, its size. We need souls that can take in the world in all its complexity and diversity, yet still maintain our integrity. And we need souls that can love and be in relationship with all of this complexity. Instead of fight or flight, we need a spiritual posture of embrace. My name is Dolores Miera, and I am your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning under these challenging circumstances. If you're not on our mailing list, please visit our website at uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. And please check out What's Happening, a weekly e-blast sent to all of our members and friends. This is a great way to keep up with the latest news in our community. And a reminder, if you wish to see this or any of our past Zoom services again, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and Facebook as well. We're on Facebook. Okay. The membership committee invites non-members to consider joining our community. Please contact Janet Cooper when she gets off the trail, or a person on the board if you are interested. So thank you. Again, good morning and welcome to everyone. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of our community as well as a promise we make and aspire to. Let us now recite our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your Zoom hand by clicking on the raise hand button in the reactions icon. When Diane calls your name, please unmute yourself, then speak.
Okay, I do have a couple announcements for today. Our women's group continues to grow through our personal sharing with one another. So please join us if you are a woman. The first Monday of the month at 2 o'clock on Zoom. The information to join us is in our UUCC newsletter. Our next topics month, the month of August, we're going to be talking about girlfriends. Okay, and I have one other announcement, and that has to do with the auction. Due to vacation still in progress, we're moving the auction date to October 16th, Saturday. And right now the plan will probably be to have it on Zoom again, although that may change. So please save any like new items of jewelry, paintings, ceramics, musical instruments, small furniture items, plants, tchotchkes that you think would be appealing to others. And also we're asking for you to consider services that you can sell, such as baking cookies or cakes or candies or cooking meals or dinners to auction off. Or if your specialty is knitting or crocheting or beading or creating your own work of art, That would be a good way to show what you can do, as well as make some money for the church. You may even want to lead a group on a hike, or take a group on a tour to secondhand stores, or have a game night or a night of magic, or give French lessons, as someone we know and love gave last year, Anita, or juggling lessons or gardening lessons. So your personal talents and gifts are great ways to help our church meet its budget needs. Think about it. What could you contribute? And we'll keep you posted. Thank you. All right. Do we have any other announcements? It doesn't look like it. So back to you.
Diane, sorry, it's Andy.
Okay.
I don't know if Lou is on this morning, but
No, he's not.
normally, okay. The men's group is scheduled to meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. and we'll continue our hybrid version with as many of us who are interested and comfortable to attend at the sanctuary, and anyone else who wants to attend but can't make it to the sanctuary is can join us via Zoom. I'll send out the link later today.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, back to you, Dolores.
Marianne was raising her hand. Marianne, did you want it? No. Okay. I saw her doing that. Okay. Next week, by popular request, we will hear a reprise of Michael Esselin's presentation of March 14th this year, Loss, Holding On, and Letting Go. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as part of your personal life, but please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. The collective flames of these candles embody all the joys and sorrows which have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. And now the first reading by John B. Wolfe was published in the UU World magazine in the spring of 2008. He says, fast from criticism and feast on praise. Fast from self-pity and feast on joy. Fast from ill temper and feast on peace. Fast from resentment and feast on contentment. Fast from jealousy and feast on love. Fast from pride and feast on humility. Fast from selfishness and feast on service. Fast from fear and feast on faith. Let us join in a time of meditation, of prayer, and of silence. Let us seek the quiet and the calm, laying aside our struggles. And in the silence, may there be a reverence in our hearts, a thankfulness within our spirit, and a deepened understanding of the meaning of our lives. Let us enter the stillness. Please come back now. Our second reading today, titled The Task of the Religious Community, written by Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. Please join in singing Come, Come, Whoever You Are, number 188.
This song is a round, so if in your homes you can figure out how to sing it as a round, please feel free. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. You're muted, Dolores.
Yes, I see that. Thank you. Today, Diane DeMarco will host a UUCC circle entitled Sharing Ourselves in the UUCC Community. Diane DeMarco is our resident healer since our very first day of coming together as a community back in 2008. She's been instrumental in producing and instituting our community covenant. As a practicing therapist and previous teacher, she has used her skills to keep our community talking and growing regardless of differences. As you will see here, she loves to get people involved. Please welcome Diane.
Good morning, everybody. It is our hope that our individual autobiographical expressions today will strengthen our kindred spirits. As UUs, we are known to be open. Next slide, please. So please tell us more about your experience or what you may be seeking at this time in your life. Next slide, please. We want to know you better. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Next slide, please. So no worries if you don't have any answers. And this t-shirt says, I'm a Unitarian Universalist. The bedrock of my faith is an unshakable belief that your guess is as good as mine. So just so you know, whatever you add today is good, and we appreciate your thoughts. Just sharing a little more about you is what today is all about. Next slide, please. Each of us fits into the whole of our community. We are all a part of UU world of existence. Consider this a place where everyone fits in, and that we would like to hear from everyone today, if possible. The real story, after all, is our everyday lives, how we cope, how we handle situations, what impacts us, sharing reflections of ourselves with others, evaluating our own journey with people who live alongside of us, who support us, who share values with us, brings us together. So tell us about your recent journey since COVID-19 began in January of 2020. We had a year and a half like no other. COVID-19 changed the world in the swiftest time frame ever thought possible. We also had huge demonstrations across the country. We lost some great people, including Kobe Bryant and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. There was an attack on our Capitol. A vaccine was developed and administered. We moved from our own sanctuary to Zoom. We stopped many of our usual activities and took up others. So what has impacted your life? We ask that you consider what each one has to say today and allow those words to be a jumping stone in your own thought process when it is your turn. But also remember that you're not obligated in any way to speak and can choose to remain silent and just listen. And if that's the case, when I call upon you, just let me know you wish to pass and we'll move on. We ask everyone to practice active listening techniques. Also on your computer, you may want to switch to view or standard to be able to see more people on the top of your screen. So next slide, please. Here are the 9 questions that we came up with. What event impacted you the most in the last 18 months? What did you enjoy the most? What was most challenging for you? How are you different than a year and a half ago? What did you learn about yourself? How did you deal with COVID-19? What were your accomplishments? What did you do for your physical and or mental health? And any other thoughts that might pertain to you in the last 18 months of your life. So if you can raise your hand, that'd even be better. I'd like to see hands from everybody out there so we can just kind of go down the list. We have about 2 to 3 minutes per person, although some people may choose not to share and others may share a little longer. We all need to stick to around 3 minutes or so at the longest. Okay, we do have a couple of hands. So
Diane, I have a quick question. Or I know we don't record the joys and concerns. Is this going to be recorded?
Andy, is this going to be recorded?
Well, we are currently recording. I can delete this from the posted version, or you can pause record right now. Diane.
If someone asks to pause the recording, I'll just pause it and then
Okay,
put it back on again. Is that
great.
okay? Okay, Amanda, did you want me to stop the recording?
I don't need to go first. I just wanted to ask. I was curious. Thank you very much for having that brief discussion.
Okay, that was a good question. Thank you. Okay, let's start with, we got a hand from Anita. So Anita, can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Thank you.
You see me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I have to start at the end of 2018. I got a wheelchair, and so I really had to learn how to use a wheelchair and adapt myself to the new situation. So 2019, I am still in the wheelchair, and So 2019 was used to see how I will be able to still be with people and driving or shopping. And so I was able to, people came by like the usual. And then 2020 started. And so because being in a wheelchair, it didn't change a lot for me. The social, socializing. So people came by and, as you know, with masks and at the distance. And so that it was all okay to me. The only thing I was really missing was the hugging. And so, but then I got over 2020. And what I have to tell you, I kind of liked to be on my own and knowing that people had to stay home. And so I didn't have to go out into the world too. It helped me to stay home too, knowing that the collective had to stay home. So that's my sharing.
Thank you, Anita.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Art, could you unmute yourself?
All right.
Art, we can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself again?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Okay, yes.
Well, Diane, I was really interested looking at the topics that you proposed to speak about. And I feel like I'm abusing them a little bit because instead of talking about myself, I want to talk about my dog. And of course, I realize that people always project through their dogs. You know, the kind of people that say my dog hates authority figures. but nevertheless, I noticed a couple things that related to Sparky. And as we'd be out on our morning walks, Sparky and I always enjoyed socializing with everybody else. And suddenly Sparky was not allowed to go and socialize with other dogs. And he didn't really seem to understand why. But I realized that Sparky was just as social as humans were. And so he was going through this sort of withdrawal pains. And it was difficult to sort of explain to him complex things like vaccines and how viruses are spread. But I did notice that he would come home and feel a little bit depressed. And so I would sometimes sit around and pay him a little extra attention. That's one thing that I noticed. But a second thing, I was really not sure what I was going to talk about today. And I was reading the LA Times this morning, and I realized that they were talking about something that has affected me very much. And that's the sort of time distortion factor. We tended to lose track, at least I tended to lose track of time. And ordinarily when you're housebound or bored and idle, time creeps by very slowly. But when you're busy, it goes very, very fast. And much to my amazement, I found that time was going very, very fast for me. And I just assumed that that was, you know, something idiosyncratic to the multiple personalities that live in my head. And the fact that perhaps I was retired with none of the typical restraints that we have on our lives, like calendaring and things like that. But then after I was reading in the Times this morning, a recent survey said that 20% of people felt that the time passed normally. 40% felt that the time passed slowly. But interestingly enough, 40% felt that time passed faster. And that's what I experienced. And they've come up with a name for it. It's called Blur's Day, where days blur from one to another. So I was constantly doing things like checking my calendar to see what date it was And then as it progressed, I would check to see what month it was. And then of course I went to year and then century. But it's an interesting phenomenon that I thought was kind of unique or personal to me, but apparently it's shared by a lot of people. So that was kind of my thoughts. One, of course, about Sparky, and then this other one about time distortion. I'm just curious if maybe other persons have felt some of those things. All right, thank you. That's all I really wanted to say. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Art.
Oh, thank you, everyone.
Okay, who would like to go next? Kat, would you unmute yourself, please?
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. You know what? I sat down at the computer and wrote, and I don't even know if I answered any of these questions, but I got about 2 minutes here. I hope you guys don't mind. All right. So I'm calling this my musings on the pandemic, if there is such a thing. I kind of enjoyed the halt that we had in life for the 6 weeks back in 2020. I never had such a long rest in so many years, if ever. I was not allowed to see my grandgirls. They lived in Los Osos at the time. I had nothing to get out of bed for. I read, I cooked, I learned the ukulele. I started playing medieval music on my accordion with a new book that I got. Luckily, money came through in different ways. I put forth efforts in the community as needed. The food outreach, neighbors helping neighbors. I called people to see how they were doing. Luckily, I never got depressed. The election for the presidency was looming. There was fear about that when I thought what could possibly happen. So figuratively, there was a dark cloud over us, over me, and it felt oppressive. Not the kind of oppression that hungry children feel, or that people in poverty feel, or that the refugees feel, or that the dilemma of the BIPOC people feel, or the incarcerated feel. However, it felt oppressive. And it just went on like that. It was so weird that people could not hug, could not gather, that people kept their distance, veering far out of the way of me when I approached someone on the hiking trail. Weird. Mask wearing was something I never got used to. Finding myself often going back to my car for a mask. And now that I'm putting this into words, it was kind of like a bad dream. Again, a dark cloud, oppressive. I'm always looking for carefree moments through this, and there were so few. Of course, finally being with my grandkids once or twice a week was pure play joy. And one time after Biden won the POTUS election, a few of us met at a friend's house and danced over and over and over to Lionel Richie's Celebrate. Bring your good times and your laughter too. We're going to celebrate and party with you, hoping for more good times to come. The other time was when the mask mandate was over on June 15th, 2021. A man friend and I went down that very Saturday to the Siren, a club in Morro Bay. The place was full. It was a free concert with Bobby Santa Cruz and his daughter and his band. And we drank, we danced, we laughed, we talked with so many people we had never met. People belly up to the bar together for drinks, smiling. There was one older couple in there dancing away, the only ones with masks on. It felt like life again for 3 hours. It felt like real life as we have known and enjoyed it. It was beautiful. Now for me, more feelings of oppression, more divide, democracy on the line, vaccinated, unvaccinated, narratives on what's happening that are being silenced, people unwilling to see past mainstream media, a dark cloud, oppression. And I feel sad for personal and worldly reasons, but I rally still. I go forward still. And still, luckily, I'm not depressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Who would like to continue? Dolores, unmute yourself, please.
Okay, so I wrote a few thoughts down as well. I felt unhurried. I breathed. I was extremely Zoom connected. Not alone, but finally alone. I reflected on my life daily. I worried about getting sick. I wore a mask, and I wear a mask. I stayed home and worked on projects I like. I liked slowing down. Time for me. Lots and lots and lots of church Zoom meetings. There were many changes I've gone through. I made and baked bread. I learned to watch movies on the TV Fire Stick. I want to be slower now. I made new friends and I connected more with my current friends. Living is lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. Amanda, could you please unmute yourself?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Can you speak
Can you
up?
hear me?
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
Okay. So I made some notes too. So when the pandemic hit, I was just starting to kind of come out of my initial grief from losing Gordon. It's the first time I've been single since I was 24. And everything was shut down right about the time I was ready to go out and start socializing again. It was my last year on the board after serving for 7 years. My last year was all Zoom board meetings. I finally, for the first time, filled the bird bath in my backyard and had so many birds and made so many videos of birds in my backyard. Loving that bird bath. And that was so nice last spring because it was very lonely because everybody had to stay home. I fostered 6 cats during the 2020 election, which was not fun. I did work for Michael Bloomberg's campaign. Thanks to you, Allison Groves, for getting me that job. I needed that money. Will never work for a candidate ever again that I don't believe in. It was not easy, but it was a lot of money. The intensification of the BLM movement reignited my activist side, and I started thinking about what I was going to do once I left office. And I moved to Oakland after 20 years in Cambria, almost 20 years exactly. I moved to Oakland. The my two takeaways are one really important embodied or visceral experience I had, and another one that just feels like an ongoing thing I keep seeing. One is watching a very slow moving, heinous disaster. Because I saw the COVID when the shutdown was starting to come, when Seattle hit Seattle, I could see that it was coming, and it's just still such a slow moving disaster. You have a hurricane come through, it goes boom, and then you got to clean up. This is just like going on and on. It's the same feeling I had when we were in the first drought in 2014. It's really hard to watch a slow moving disaster. It's like everything's in slow motion and I know what the end is going to be. It kind of sucks. And the other, and I'm just going to very briefly touch on this. I had a very embodied is the only way I can say it. I had a very, one of the most emotional experiences ever, because I went to leave my house at some point in May and everybody was still washing everything down and wearing gloves and nobody's going to stores and everything's getting delivered. and I go to leave the house. And at that time, especially in Cambria and San Luis County, people who did not want to wear a mask would yell at people who were wearing masks. And I was afraid to go out because I knew if somebody saw me wearing a mask, which I wanted to wear for my own safety, they would yell at me. And I had experiences of people yelling at me for wearing a mask. And my experience walking out the door that day was, okay, so I know if I see somebody that's not wearing a mask, that person's a threat. And immediately I thought, wow, what if I was Black walking out my door and I'm looking at every face of a white person thinking that person could be a threat to me, physical threat to my life. And it just, I really felt for the first time kind of what that might be like to live in a body that, I mean, I can take my mask off. When you're Black, you're Black. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it. Wayne, would you please unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes, very well.
Good. One thing I found is that I miss being with you all in person. Being on Zoom in no way replicates the feeling of being with you all. So I'm looking forward to that. I discovered that my increasing role as a caregiver has, I would say, I've let myself become more isolated, and the pandemic exacerbated that, and it's only now that I'm really looking happily to the future as I plan to be back singing with several groups and socializing and so on. So I feel like I have an opportunity to open up again. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Very heartfelt sharings. Thank you all so much. Francis Wild, would you please unmute yourself and share with us?
Hi, everyone. I am from upstate New York, Lake Placid area, in about an hour and a half from Montreal. I started 2020 New Year's Eve, finding out I was working in a metal fab shop at the time, and I found out that my stepdad had died. And that's how I kicked off 2020. So like crying at a comedy show that we had tickets to, actually, which was really funny. So it was like comedy tragedy all at once. Fast forward a year, I was doing odd jobs. I've got a myriad of useful skills, so I just kept picking up different work. We all got laid off at the shop. So painting and just all kinds of things, working on cars and all kinds of stuff. Waitressing, lots of waitressing. And so I never stopped working. I just masked up and wore gloves. And I'm kind of wary of people anyway, so I kind of liked when they stayed away. That was kind of fun for me. It's like, oh, cool. So that was cool. And so yeah, and then so a year later, I broke up with the man I was seeing for several years, and I ended up getting an apartment, which I don't normally do. I'm generally a traveler. So I do better when I'm outside. And when I got the apartment, everything just got very small, and it was winter in New York. So I left and I adopted my stepdad's van, which I am currently sitting in. So Spaceship Luna is what I call her. And then, so yeah, I've just been very blessed to have the little house here in the van, and I've been traveling ever since. I did a bunch of time in Sedona, Arizona. So now I've been in Cambria several weeks, and started working in town here, but it seemed like a good spot to stay for a while. So I'm just trying to get to know some of the community. And this is just a really neat concept. I don't know, I've never attended one of these before. So thank you for being so welcoming, and I got a lot to think on today. You all say a lot of really thought-provoking things, so I appreciate that as well. So peace, and I hope to actually meet some of you, and we can all like practice hugging again. I'm in that boat too. So cool. Thank you all.
Thank you, Frances. It's very nice to get to meet you. Okay, Jan, would you unmute yourself, please?
Sure. Frances, it's refreshing to see you. I hope we see you often. I have been a teacher, private music teacher of voice and piano for 38 years. And that came to a grinding halt on March 14th last year. And I kind of like it. After 38 years, it's okay. You know, I can take a break. And I spent that time practicing Chopin and Brahms, and I'm absolutely in heaven just playing the piano, just to play the piano and get better. But I don't know if I'll go back to teaching. I'm not sure. And I've loved the fact that I had time for myself, and I love people, but I like not being with people too. So that was okay. And I'm just grateful that we've survived so far, and hope for the best.
Thank you, Jan. All right, who is next? Don, could you unmute yourself, please?
Oh, thank you. I trust we have room for one more. Yeah, I just jotted a few things down as people were talking, and this is what I've come up with. I too enjoyed the pause at first. I was beginning to feel a little overwhelmed with various responsibilities. So for a couple of months there, it was actually kind of pleasant to have no obligations and not have to do much of anything. However, as time progressed, I found that I was getting a little crazy. And so that's something I think others have probably also experienced. And I did experience exactly what Art was talking about, the time distortion. In fact, I'm still suffering a little from that, but it got to the point where it seemed to me time was just extending into this infinite succession of days. And it was things, in that regard, it was these church services and some of my other regular activities that kept me at least partially oriented correctly to time. At least the Sundays were where they needed to be. And the board meetings kind of also kept me fairly well oriented, but it was an odd sensation. As I said, I enjoyed the pause at first and took advantage of that to learn a few new things. I started messing around with the clarinet and rented a cello for about 4 months and enjoyed something I'd always wanted to try. And by the way, I can recommend that. That's a lot of fun. So those are the good things. I think the other thing that there are some pluses to this experience, not that I would want to endure it again. One thing, it was very clear to me how it became very clear. I mean, I kind of knew it, but it became very clear how connected people are and how connected I am. And I'm a relatively, I can go for weeks without talking to anybody. If I didn't live with somebody, I could still very happily for about a week or so just be good with my own company. But I discovered that how difficult it was to maintain social distance. When I talk to somebody, we might be masked, but there was this magnetism drawing us together. Or people would talk to me out on the ranch. They might ask me some directions and they'd start coming towards me and I'd have to step away and they'd be chasing me across the path. It was this unconscious desire. So that was pretty clear that we are very, very connected species. The pluses to the experience, that was one. The other thing for me, it was able to connect with people around the world because of my former musical activities. There was some 101st birthday party for one of my old teachers. We had 200 people from all over the world and people I hadn't seen for more than 50 years. That was really quite an experience. And then the other thing, which I think some of you may also have experienced, is I've seen more of my relatives in the last 18 months than I've seen in 4 or 5 years. At this point now, we have a weekly family Zoom. So that has to be a good thing. And I doubt we would have done it without the push from the pandemic. So that's a plus. The other thing, which is a plus in general, is the personal plus also. Having to deal with the challenge of having relationships with people who have an absolutely different view of what's real. And that is a real challenge. I've got a niece who is totally anti-vax, won't wear masks, picked up her family and moved to Idaho. And yet we love each other. Somehow we have to maintain that relationship. It's a real challenge. And I think she's experiencing it from the other side as well. So this is something that I personally am having to deal with. And I'm sure others of you have as well. In a more general thing, though, I think the plus, if there is one to this pandemic, is that it has, this stress to our society has revealed in very, very clear, unmistakable, I don't say detail, I mean, the cracks in our society, the weaknesses in our society and in our political structures. This stress has revealed that and brought forth as a good thing, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement and some of these other things. So that stressor may, in the end, help us in as our civilization move forward. Just at least one hopes so. Finally, in terms of going forward, I have to say I'm not personally comfortable yet with a complete reopening. I'm a little worried, so I'm still after nearly 16 months of distancing and being careful. It's very hard for me. I don't feel comfortable going to a restaurant. It just feels weird and wrong. So that's an issue. And the other thing, I really don't have, looked at what we've experienced so far and looking at our climate problems and all the other problems. I have some sense of, I guess I have faith that things will get better, but I have no clear idea at all as to how us humans are going to get through all the stuff that's coming down the pike at us. So on the one hand, I feel optimistic, but I'm also a little bit worried, but I'm not going to give up, and none of us should give up. We just have to keep moving forward. Anyway, thank you all.
Thank you, Don. All right, in lieu of not a lot of time, if someone has just a few last words to say, Marianne, were you wanting to say something? Yes, unmute yourself.
Yeah. A lot of you know I'm a poet. I wrote a book during the pandemic. It's called Before the After. And I just want to leave us with a note of hope with my very last poem in this book. It's called This Is Not the End. A sacred flaw has bestowed upon us unexpected unity. I never knew my neighbor until he bled at my doorstep, unmasked and alone. Blessings come in thorny packages, but who would open them willingly? The if only factor irrelevant. The why and wherefore washed away with our tears, leaving us to ponder the difference between light and darkness when we are lost in obscurity. This is not the end. The life cycle continues with or without us, ignores our pleas for mercy and a few more years on this uneven playing field. And still we gather together or distanced on our soul-fed journey, lift up our voices and sing, raise our arms in prayer, asking that the one-way winged return we all must make will bring us peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Beautiful. All right, so Francis, is that something very short that you can add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm gonna stay for a minute because I'd like to get maybe a phone number or two from like
Yes,
Diane or
definitely.
somebody, I don't know,
Connect with you afterwards.
a couple of the ladies. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, that was marvelous. I wish we could go on for another hour or two because I think there's so much that we have to say and share. And I hope we do this again soon because it's sharing from our hearts. And in closing, for this portion of the service, I just want to quote from Parker J. Palmer, Quaker author and teacher. He said, "The human soul does not want to be fixed. It wants simply to be seen and heard." I hope that you have felt seen and heard today and listened and shared with all of us. Thank you so much. Back to you, Dolores.
Thank you, Diane. That was great. We need more of those. Normally at this time, we receive offerings from our congregants. However, due to the virtual format of this service, we invite you to make your offering in one of the methods shown on the screen. These methods are posted in the newsletter and on the UUCC website. Please keep in mind that our congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You are invited to participate in the blessing of giving by sending us an offering. Thank you. Our thanks for all gifts given and received for the work of this community. Let us all now sing the doxology.
From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue.
Please join in singing the closing hymn, "I'm on My Way," number 116.
the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way. Great God, I'm on my way. I asked my sister, come and go with me. I asked my sister, come and go with me. I asked my sister, come and go with me. I'm on my way, I'm on my way, I'm on my way. I asked my brother, come and go with me. I asked my brother, come and go with me. I asked my brother, come and go with me. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. If they say no, I'll go anyway. If they say no, I'll go anyway. If they say no, I'll go anyway. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. I'm on my way, and I won't turn back. I'm on my way, and I won't turn back. I'm on my way, I won't turn back. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way.
Let us now recite the valediction. We extinguish the flame of this chalice, and we know that the light of truth and love and the warmth of this community go with us until we meet again. Please extinguish your chalice at home now. Diane, I believe.
Okay, we'll go for the benediction. Great and endless mystery and wonder, may you never stop giving us opportunity for connections that light the fire inside of us. And may we never stop seeking and reaching out for connections with each other, even when we are so tangled and wound so tightly that we struggle to find the plug. Thank you all for coming and communicating in our beloved UUCC community. And we look forward to seeing you next week. And Francis, hang around. We'll connect. So take care, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.